Reactivity is the core of my program, Breaking Reactive Patterns, the blueprint for building a safe and healthy relationship. Now, I often get asked, why did I create a program around reactivity? The answer to that is not that simple. The reality is that our relationships are very complicated, but at the core of our dysfunction is our reactivity. And there's even things beneath that people have to understand in order for them to really truly improve themselves and their relationship. And I'm about to get into that today to help you understand exactly what you have to be able to do to truly change yourself and transform yourself into a new person so that you can have a healthy and happy relationship that is seated in a foundation of safety and security. So before we get started in that, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you turn the bell on, and please like and comment on these videos because it helps boost me and the algorithm, and even share this with anybody else who might need to hear this information. So John Gottman, most people have heard of him. He is kind of the guru when it comes to healthy relationships and studying relationships. He's been doing it for 30, 35 years, something like that. He's identified 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, is what he calls them. And those are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Now, what do all 4 of those things have in common? Reactivity. These are all forms of reactivity to, certain specific types of threats that we interpret based on our own unique survival optimization system, our SOS system. What is the survival optimization system? This is our own internal wiring that allows us to detect threat, whether that threat is an actual threat, somebody's chasing you, trying to hurt you, or a perceived threat that I don't like the way that person's looking at me, or I don't like how you're talking to me, or I feel threatened because I'm feeling insecure that you're better than me, or whatever it might be. Our threats are very nuanced and can encompass hundreds or even thousands of different types of ways that we get triggered and activated. So when our survival optimization system turns on, we operate from our 4 survival responses: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Now, when we kind of think about, feeling like we're under threat, most people don't really kind of think about fight, flight, freeze, and fawn as like the actual things that we do when we are, in an actual threatened event, right? But we do this in all of these kind of micro ways. So fight can look like, actually fighting, but it could also look like attitude. It can look like what I call fight energy, which is dominance, intimidation. It can look like, pushing away in some way, like, I don't like that, or talking down to people, criticisms, all of these different ways that we kind of fight without actually hurting somebody, pushing somebody, using our fists or hands. Same with flight, same with freeze, and same with fawn. All of these energies that we have are exceptionally nuanced and create significant dysfunction because they're all reactive responses. The reason that I focus so much on reactivity is because reactivity is dysfunctional in and of itself, especially when we are with people we say that we love and we care about. When we get reacted to them, we set our relationship up in a position where we are potentially creating dysfunction and failure. So the relationship becomes unsteady or unbalanced or thin ice-like when we have these forms of reactivity as patterns in our lives and we're not taking care of them. So this is where the couple starts to fall into dysfunction, or you start to break the relationships with your own children, and you cannot seem to get on the same page because your reactivity is a significant contributor to the problem. So you must learn about your own reactive patterns. You have to learn how to take control and take responsibility for them by breaking those apart, and then to grow beyond those so that you can ensure the longevity of your relationships and stay connected to the people that you love and care about. So where do we learn all of the nuance in our survival optimization system? This really does begin in childhood. A lot of times people don't really like to talk about their childhood. They don't really see that there's a connection between what's happening now and what happened back then. They could not be more dead wrong. Absolutely dead wrong. When we are children, we are helpless and we're very dependent, especially on our caregivers. And as a result, we are looking to them continuously, both consciously and unconsciously, looking to them to monitor their upsets, their moods, their attitudes, their rules, their ways of living, their beliefs, what's okay, what's not okay, all as a way for us to stay connected and so that we continue to get our needs met. All of our parents, all of our caregivers were flawed and they have dysfunctional beliefs. As a result, your survival optimization system works to predict and assess and manage any kind of threat. So you are looking at mom and dad's flaws as a way to manage your ability to stay connected to them. So some of those things, like if you have a parent who is very domineering or fear-based, or they're very intimidating, or they're constantly disapproving of something that you're doing, you might fall into like a fawning strategy where you feel like you have to walk on eggshells and you have to cower and cater to your parents to get their approval in some way or to stay on their good side. And then that might change over time into more fight energy as you get a little bit older as a teenager, like it did for me, and you get a little bit more oppositional, like I'm going to do my own thing and stop telling me what to do and, leave me alone kind of stuff, that push against energy, right? So as a result, we adapt. We adapt in our survival throughout our lives. And it doesn't mean literal survival. It doesn't mean like life and death. It's more emotional survival. So our survival instincts, our fight, flight, freeze, and fawn instincts also work for emotional and psychological survival as well. And that is where things get very nuanced for us. So those adaptations that we form in our childhood become stronger and we reinforce them over time. So for instance, if you have parents who get angry easily, they're very domineering or critical when they get angry, you may learn to repress your anger and adapt by trying to please them. So you stay emotionally and psychologically safe. You also may have parents who abandon you when you get sad. So you adapt by learning to cover up your sadness. So you adapt by adopting a belief that says that vulnerability is weakness, and I don't want to feel like I get abandoned or rejected by my parents. So I will just cover that vulnerability and that sadness up and pretend it doesn't exist. So we build our defenses around feeling sad and feeling vulnerable. Or you may have parents who are unaffectionate and they're cold or they're indifferent. So you adapt by just basically telling yourself that you don't need those things. You don't need connection. You don't need love. You don't need affection. And as a result of shutting down those emotions, you are adapting to, live in that world with your parents so you can stay safe. Now, none of these adaptations that I just described are healthy. They're all dysfunctional because you're operating with dysfunctional people. And you're operating yourself as a little kid trying to navigate the complexities of adults who have their own stuff and that they're carrying from their own childhood as well. Now, over time, these adaptations start to coalesce and start to form specific belief systems. So again, when we're trying to understand why are we so reactive, why do we have these defenses, why am I critical, why do I stonewall, why do I shut down, why do I feel so insecure, it's because of these adaptations that have coalesced and formed into something called schemas. And these are very dysfunctional belief systems that are at the root of all of our dysfunction in terms of our relationships and who we are as a person. The schema is simply a belief, and beliefs are just that we've made up our mind based off of our own experiences and all the evidence that we've accumulated over the years that this is true. All the examples that I just identified earlier may coalesce into specific schemas that say that, being open and talking with my partner or admitting to my faults or taking responsibility for myself is weakness. So I will defend those things with my reactivity. I will be angry if you call me out. I will be upset if you criticize me. I may shut down if you reject me in some way or another, because deep down inside, it's too painful. Like, it reminds us too much of our childhood that we didn't get those things growing up. And as a result, we unconsciously play that out again. And so we end up recreating the very things that we didn't like in our childhood by accident. Schemas are very self-defeating. They create the dysfunction in our lives, like I said, and they keep repeating themselves over and over and over. This is why people will come to me in therapy and say, I feel like I have dated the same person over and over again, or I have the same experiences over and over again throughout my life or throughout my relationships. And that's not by any kind of mistake. It's because this is the baggage that you're carrying with you from the dysfunctional experiences you had in your childhood or your teens. And this is why reactivity is really hard to figure out for people, is because often they look in the wrong direction. They just see themselves as angry, and they say, okay, I need to learn anger management skills. Or they see themselves shutting down and they say, I need to learn communication skills. What they're missing with all of that is that they're not looking back far enough. And, we call it peeling the onion. You keep kind of finding a layer, and then you see another layer and another layer, and you keep looking back to where this all began. And a lot of times what people find is that it does begin in your childhood, and it does begin in your teen years. Once you can see the patterns of that reactivity, then you can see why you didn't feel emotionally safe in your childhood. And then you can also see how you're actually doing the very thing that you didn't mean to do. So for instance, in my world, when I was raised by somebody who didn't really exhibit a lot of patience or understanding. Like, he wanted things to be a certain way. He wanted things to be his way. And the way that he went about that is by being very impatient that things aren't the way he wants them to be, and he would get loud or intimidating or aggressive in certain ways. That taught me to shut down and to kind of fawn, and like try to stay off his radar, do what I'm told, try to make sure that he's happy in some way or another. Over time, that again switched from fawn over to fight energy, and I became a pretty oppositional teenager, that I just didn't want to be told what to do. I wanted to be very independent. I did not want to be talked to in a certain way. I was not interested in pleasing him anymore. And so as a result, I just kind of tried to carve my own path, and I just wanted to be left alone. Unfortunately, that oppositional teenager came out of my teen years and into my adult life, and I accidentally started aiming that at my wife and my own kids. And so I became more irritable, annoyed, impatient. The very things that I hated growing up, I ended up doing to my children. Now, I always say, your reactivity is kind of like a dial. It's like 0 to 10, So if I could say that my father was like say a 6 or a 7 on that dial, I was probably more like a, 4 on that dial. Not identical to him, not even close, but enough to create dysfunction, because that's my dysfunctional pattern that's in me. And I ended up projecting that onto my family, just the way that he ended up projecting it onto me and to my siblings. So understanding those projections and understanding the ways that we do this to one another, and how you recreate your family dynamic in one way or another, is why people end up dating the same people over and over again, or why those patterns follow them around. And so it doesn't matter how many anger management classes you take, or how much communication work you do in therapy with your partner. You're not actually working at the source of the problem. So once you understand the pattern and you can see it, then you can understand how to pull it up by its roots. Because truly changing your reactive patterns, truly breaking those down and breaking free from them, is about transformation. It's about moving away from your dysfunction and moving toward the person you truly want to be. When you can identify with who you really truly want to be, and you also know how to work with those schemas, how to completely undo them, how to communicate differently, how to be different in the way that you operate your life outside of those adaptations and those schemas, then you truly begin to transform. I often have so many people who come to me before they start my class and they say things like, yeah, I've gone to therapy for years, but I just can't seem to break these patterns. I can't seem to stop myself. Or they say, my partner and I have gone to marital therapy many times, but I didn't get anything out of it. Well, that's because you're working on the wrong things. You're not working in the right issues. You're not working in the right area because you're working on the relationship potentially and not on the dysfunction. So it's really important for you to know that if you are using those adaptations from childhood in your current life, you will create dysfunction the same way that your parents created dysfunction because they were using their adaptations on you. Nobody is meaning to do this. It just happens. This is the way human beings are. So the way out of all of this is learning how to build the healthy adult. The healthy adult is the part of you that you weren't taught. Nobody taught you how to become the healthy adult because you were just in those survival, you were in your survival brain trying to work through just adapting to the people around you. So the healthy adult allows us to really identify how we want to be. And then we have to learn the skills around how to be that person. So again, it's not something you're born with, it's something that you learn. And you can only learn it through the experiences of breaking free from the reactivity, letting go or shifting those dysfunctional schema beliefs, because all of that is in the way of you becoming the person that you really want to become. For instance, if you had a parent who was highly critical of you, you never learned how to really truly believe in yourself. You never really learned how to have self-worth. And so as a result of never really learning how to have self-worth, you will continually search out for worth in different areas. You want other people to give you affection or attention or tell you you're good enough in some way or another because you never got that growing up and you don't know how to give that to yourself now. So being the healthy adult helps you to see, oh, that's where it all comes from. It's from the way that I was raised. That's why I'm so insecure in my relationships. That's why I tend to be so needy, or I tend to manipulate to get the attention that I want because I never got that growing up. So becoming the healthy adult helps you kind of like pull the curtain back and see all of that. So then you can know how to be able to get what your needs met in a healthy and functional way, and not in a dysfunctional, insecure way where you just keep recreating the same patterns over and over again. Developing the healthy adult is not easy. It takes a lot of work and it takes commitment to practicing the skills that you've learned. So the healthy adult is all about personal development and emotional well-being. It's about creating more balance and maturity in the way that you operate your life. And it's more of a realistic part of yourselves that you can regulate your emotions more effectively. You can make more thoughtful decisions. You are far more in control and you are in what we call the observer self, the ability to witness yourself and to make decisions like, is this the right thing to say? Is this the right thing to do? Rather than what reactivity does, which is very impulsive. Right? We just feel something and we do something. And as a result of doing that, we end up unconsciously creating the problem because we're operating from our unconscious reactions rather than thoughtful decision making where we are, making decisions and acting in ways that are within our integrity. This is how I want to be. This is who I am. This is who I'm striving to become. If all of this speaks to you and you can see these patterns inside of yourself, you understand that there was some dysfunction in your childhood. You can see that, oh my gosh, I have all of this reactivity. It is creating so many problems in my life. I want you to please check out my program, Breaking Reactive Patterns, the blueprint for building a safe and healthy relationship. Go to my website, drscottsymes.com. Look through the testimonials of people who've taken my class. Read through how you can understand yourself. Watch some other videos. Understand that my goal in all of the videos that I create is how to look at yourself. It's not about how to create the most perfect relationship, that you can have. That is secondary to becoming the person that you need to become within yourself. So many people come to me because they know they need to change, but they have no idea where to even begin. And my channel is about, this is the starting point. This is where you begin. You begin by looking at yourself. If you can look at yourself, understand yourself in completely new ways, truly know who you are, then you suddenly become the person that you want to become, and your relationships start to improve naturally because you're no longer doing the very things that sabotage them. You're no longer the same person you were. So your relationship is always secondary to your own internal individual growth. Once you have achieved that and you know you've become the person that you really want to become, your relationship starts to naturally take an upswing because you and your partner are now growing together, and you're no longer in the basement of safety and security. Now you're up in the higher structures of love and connection, and then the higher structures of self-esteem and self-worth. And you're operating from a completely new dynamic that sets you up for success. If you're interested in scheduling a discovery call with me, check out the links below in the description. Please check out my program, Breaking Reactive Patterns, the Blueprint for Building a Safe and Healthy Relationship. You can find more information on that at drscottsymes.com. And watch this next video on how to make sure that you are not playing the victim in problems that you create. Thanks for watching.